Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Prime Minister Netanyahu breaks his media boycott for a series of landmark weekend interviews. The various parties ramp up their campaigning ahead of Tuesday elections, and suddenly there's a giant shortage of butter in Israel, so stay tuned to find out why. All right, now round two of Israeli elections are just 3 days away, and tensions are running higher than ever, with voter turnout expected to be dismally low. Well, Netanyahu, for his part, is now fighting until the last moment, taking to Israel's three biggest television networks Saturday night for a series of very rare interviews. How rare, you ask? Well, over the past few years, the Prime Minister has been arguing with the media, accusing it of near conspiratorial bias against him. And just 2 weeks ago, Netanyahu even called for a boycott on Channel 12. Then on Saturday, he still interviewed on the network opposite its anchor, Rina Matzliach. Despite appearing on these channels, though, Netanyahu's views on the media aren't any more tempered. In fact, he even entered a heated debate with Matzliach, accusing her of daily incitement against him and of labeling Likud voters a blind herd for their support.
ההסתה היא יומיומית נגדי, בתקשורת, בערוצים, כולל בערוץ שלך, כולל אצלך, אין סוף, ומותר, וזה לא רק מכוון לי, זה מכוון כדי להפיל אותי בראשות הליכוד, בראשות הימין. כן, התקשורת מוטט, כן, יש דברים שלא יעשו, ובוודאי בחברה דמוקרטית הדרך היחידה לעשות, זה לבקר את המבקרים. כל אחד יכול לבקר אותי, לא לשחוט אותי כמו שאתם עושים לילה לילה בשקרים, אבל לבקר כן, כמו שיש לי את הזכות לבקר חזרה.
Matzliach clarified, however, that she was referring to Likud Knesset members who voted unanimously to return to elections. And as for the other issues, the networks defended previous comments as being in search of truth. Further, with respect to the combative nature of the 23-minute segment on Channel 12, Matzliach said that not one of the other party leaders spoke to her in the same tone. But so if Netanyahu holds animosity against the media, what was so important that it necessitated breaking his pseudo-boycott? Well, among his multiple points, the premier apparently seeks to clear the air about allegations against him, while also campaigning against voter apathy. Again, he claims that if people don't vote on Tuesday, then, as things stand, he's going to lose. He also then denies responsibility for dividing Israel by inciting against Arabs and the left, adding that attempts to broker an immunity deal against future indictments never happened either. Then finally, as for whether we might return to elections for a third time, were Netanyahu to fail in forming a coalition, Netanyahu refrained from answering, but he says that we mustn't come to that, and there's no reason for us to come to that. And now for more on the elections, we're joined by Knesset candidate for Israel Beitenu, Colonel in the Reserves, Olivier Rafovitz. Olivier, thank you so much for coming in again. So how would you explain Netanyahu's decision to interview this weekend on multiple channels that up until now he's essentially been boycotting? Where do you think that decision comes from?
I think that we are in the last days of a very harsh campaign. As usual, Netanyahu is a quite good campaigner, and he knows how to manipulate or how to use, I would say, the media in order to gain more power. I mean, more people who are going to vote for him. And he's playing all the time the victim, like the guy who is actually losing, and in late days he asks people, please help me. I'm like Gewalt, we say in Hebrew, in Yiddish. I'm alone, I'm lost. Please go and go voting for me. Here, I mean, we're actually observing a very interesting position of the underdog, asking for being supported. Your question, I mean, is very interesting because actually this man, but I mean, as a candidate, Netanyahu knows very well how to influence the audience in Israel, playing this again, this poor candidate like losing. And please go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you think that it helped him? Do you think that it worked? And do you think he's Who do you think is going to be forming the next coalition?
Listen, in my case, as you know, I'm part of this campaign because I'm part of Israel Beitenu with Avigdor Lieberman, and what we are asking is actually to have a large coalition with Likud, with Kachol Lavan, blue and white, and with Israel Beitenu together, without the Orthodox parties and without the Messianic members of some parties who are just asking Israel to be something that we really don't want Israel to be. So hopefully we will get what we want to get. We are not so interested right now to define who will be the next prime minister, because the issue is between Israel Beitenu and Israel of Litzman, Israel of Smotrich and Rafi Peretz. So we have to wait a little bit more.
But right now, pretty much all the polls say the same thing, that Israel Beitenu is in the middle, the kingmaker, so to speak, which can decide who will have the power to form a coalition in the end, in terms of the numbers.
To your question, sorry.
Well, so that's what I wanted to ask. Let's assume that either they join Likud, that Israel Beitenu either joins Likud and the right-wing bloc to form a coalition, just hypothetically, or we go to third elections.
No, we are not going to a third election.
So they will make a decision either way.
President Rivlin, I think, will play a major role in order to really decide. But what we are going to see, if the first party, head of party, Likud or Kahol Lavan, blue and white, we will accept a large coalition, we will recommend to the president that he will form the next coalition.
So what is this? So now my final question is, what is this defense treaty that was mentioned by Netanyahu on Saturday? Is it another attempt by Netanyahu to maybe attract voters, or is it a real historical decision?
Totally.
It's just another gimmick?
You don't make, I'm from the military, you don't make such very deep and very, I would say, sophisticated treaty agreement with the USA in 2 days. I mean, maybe this issue has been discussed, but it has been very quickly disclosed by Prime Minister actually Netanyahu to make people think that tomorrow we are going to sign a new agreement. So please make me be the next prime minister, because I will be the guy we will sign with Trump. Trump, I believe, and I like everybody, I respect so much Mr. Trump as a president of the USA. I don't believe really that he will right now involve himself such in deep in Israel, telling that I will support Netanyahu now. Maybe this issue has been discussed, but as usual, Mr. Netanyahu has been like a magician, just to use this proposal to say that I'm the guy in charge. And that's something, again, that's manipulation before elections. And I think that people in Israel are clever enough to see what is right, what is wrong, and what is manipulation.
All right, Colonel in the Reserves, Olivier Rafowitz, thank you so much for coming in again.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the opposition in Israel is equally worried ahead of Tuesday's elections as expected voter turnout continues to drop, and the polls reveal more borderline numbers. For example, after dipping below rival party Blue and White for the first time since April, Netanyahu's Likud is now back on top in the polls with 32 to 33 seats, in part thanks to the anti-gay and religious Noam party dropping out of the race to avoid splitting the right-wing bloc, especially as Noam is not expected to pass the electoral threshold. Similarly, the Blue and White Party has been pressuring voters to focus on them instead of on the smaller left-wing parties, in efforts to beat the Likud in real numbers. But the smaller Arab and left-wing parties feel differently. They're now blasting Blue and White for its strategy, arguing that it's destroying the left-wing bloc, and thus eliminating the chance of unseating Netanyahu. Because some of the left-wing parties are now at risk of failing to enter the Knesset at all, which means that even if Blue and White beats Likud in hard numbers, they'll lose the overall chance to form a government. The Democratic camp and the Labour parties are hovering just above the threshold with 6 and 5 seats respectively, and currently the right-wing bloc already commands upwards of 57 mandates against the center-left Arab bloc's 55, with Lieberman's Israel Beitenu party coming in at 8 seats and pushing for a unity coalition. As for the Arab parties, the newly reformed Joint Arab List is currently the third largest faction with 12 expected seats, but they too are struggling with abysmally low voter turnout and voter confidence, as many Israeli Arab voters argue that no matter who wins, left or right, neither wants to partner with the joint list. Now, speaking of voter turnout, while apathy over the polls is reportedly rampant this time around, some Israelis are getting excited to cast their ballot. And here with us now are 3 such citizens who are here to vote in Israel for the second time, if you count April. Ivan Luri from Russia, Kenneth Reisky, or Kalman Reisky from the US, and Lindsay King from Canada. Thank you all so much for coming in today. It's a pleasure to have you. So why don't we just open it up? Ivan, why don't you start, where are you from and who are you voting for?
Sure. Well, I'm Ivan. I'm from Moscow, Russia. I made Aliyah a year and 3 months ago, and I'm voting Labour Gesher because they're focused on social politics, and I believe that I'm still early in the country to be able to differentiate the other aspects of politics in Israel. So for me, the main aspect is social politics right now, integration, all that.
All right.
Okay, I am originally from Philadelphia, and we lived on Long Island for 27 years, and then we made Aliyah 4.5 years ago. And I'm still undecided. I don't know which one I'm going to vote for. I'm leaning towards Otzma Yehudit, but I've been looking. There's a possibility I may be voting for Yamina. I'm not there yet. I can change my mind at any moment until I get to the voting booth.
But somewhere towards the right religious...
Very much to the right. Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, Lindsay?
So I'm Lindsay. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and usually my politics are like quite left-wing. And originally I was going to go with Meretz and last election, and then I went with Kahol Lavan because I liked what they said. But this time around, I've actually been convinced to go with Yisrael Beitenu.
Okay, so, I mean, what do you guys think about, like, the rapidly changing political arena here in the landscape? How does that make you, feel?
Excited, to be honest, because I come from a country where we have the same president for 20 years, only one political party. The opposition is completely grounded, so I'm excited. But at the same time, I feel it's a big balagan for me. I can see it in the billboards, in the political programs. I read them in Russian and English, and I can even see the difference in how they're aimed at. So it's a balagan.
Yeah.
It's like Ivan says, it's a balagan. It's a balagan.
I mean, are you having any trouble kind of keeping up with what's going on with the politics?
There are only two kinds of politicians: the ones I know personally and the ones I do not know personally. That's the only kind there are. That's the way it was in the States. That's the way it is here.
So the last election I followed a lot. I was really interested in. This election I've been kind of confused a little bit why we're having it again. I understand the basics. But what it came down to for me is it seems like some of the very extreme sides of the political spectrum have a lot more control than I think that they should, because I think that everyone's opinion should be valued. And while while I might not agree with everything of Yisrael Beitenu, what's really important to me is that they reached out to the Olim population. Like, they contacted Keep Olim, or Keep Olim asked every political party if they would come and listen to us and help us. And the only ones that came or responded was Yisrael Beitenu. And to me, that's important, that I don't want you to tell me what to do. I want to tell you what I want you to do.
Sure. So, okay, I mean, why... I guess, kind of the big question you're all probably very used to answering. Why did you move from your respective countries to Israel? And, I don't know, what are you thinking right about now after having done so?
Well, we came here because we had a big opening. I mean, 2 years before we made Aliyah, it was not even on the table. But a lot of openings happened. A lot of things came together. Our son was already here. And then in our professional and personal lives, just everything came together. And we had the opportunity. We took it. And that's why we came here. We've always wanted to come here. Ever since my wife and I met, we've talked about coming here. We're married 35 years and counting. We've always wanted to come here, and we just took the opportunity to come here.
And you're happy here?
Yeah, we're happy. We haven't looked back.
Sure.
I guess you could say I came for the weather. I don't know why, for whatever reason in Israel I'm so much happier than I was in Canada. I love being outside all the time. I love, people welcome you and chit-chat, you make friends very quickly. So that's about it.
Well, so, okay, I'm going to ask my next question in a minute. Yeah, first of all, Ivan, why did you make Aliyah?
Well, since I've started traveling around the world, I've stopped feeling home in Russia. I've actually felt unsafe there. Then a few times I came to Israel, including my relative's wedding, and I felt amazing here. So I decided it's time to move. But I'm what they call a part of the Putin's Aliyah, people escaping what's Russia turning into. Right now, I feel weird. It's a mixed feeling. I'm really happy, but I'm struggling.
So, so I kind of actually wanted to ask you earlier, because you mentioned Putin earlier, Netanyahu actually just came back from Russia. He met with Putin, and a lot of the political analysts here are saying, he's vying for the Russian-Israeli vote. How does that come off to you? How, as a Russian expat, how do you view this meeting with the lens of elections?
I feel it makes me really upset because I don't want Israel to turn into what's going with Putin, and them being all chit-chatty and brotherly together. Oh, look, they're smiling.
Well, so what do you think should change? What would you want your politicians to know or to do or to go towards?
Okay, what I want Bibi to know, first of all, I want Bibi to know that last Wednesday Upper Dublin outran Cheltenham. And he'll know what I'm talking about there. Our respective high schools were rivals in the league. But I want to know, he's now talking about annexing annexation. Why? He's already had 13 years to do it. Why hasn't he done it yet? Why only now?
It's an interesting question. Yeah, it's a good question.
I would like them to focus. I understand security is a big deal here, but I think there's a lot of infrastructure problems, like within our own society. One of them being like slum landlords. It's insane that there's no protection for tenants in this country, and it's all the powers in the people that own the apartments. And I would also say that 34 kids in a classroom with one teacher is not okay. It means that at least 5 children are not going to learn what they need, and we're already accepting 5 children won't get it.
All right. Final comments, Ivan?
I would just like to remind Israeli politicians that if we consider ourselves a democracy in the Middle East, the democracy is hardly earned but easily lost. And with people being in power for years and concentrating all the power in one hand, that's not democracy at all. It's a facade. So please keep in mind.
All right, so there's a lot to keep in mind for our politicians. I want to thank you guys so much for taking your time to come out and tell us about what your thoughts are, especially as Olim, because we have a lot of Olim in here in this country. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Moving on, Prime Minister Netanyahu is now returned from Moscow, where he and Russian President Putin discussed the upcoming elections, and Putin made clear that he does have certain expectations of whomever comes out on top in the upcoming vote.
И, конечно, нам не безразлично, какие люди, честно вам скажу, придут в парламент Израиля. Мы очень рассчитываем на то, что это будут ответственные политики, которые в любом случае сохранят все, что было достигнуто в двухсторонних отношениях в последнее время и будут вместе с нами двигаться дальше по пути развития российско-израильских отношений.
But aside from attempting to shore up the Russian-Israeli vote back home, Netanyahu also met with Russian security officials discussing security cooperation in the region with respect to combating Iran's presence in Syria and beyond. Netanyahu says that coordination with Russia is paramount following Iran's increasing attempts to attack Israel in the past few months, adding that the threat is intolerable and begs response. The discussion is especially pertinent now, however, as a drone attack has sparked massive fires at Saudi Arabia's largest oil field and processing facility. Houthi rebels, suspected of being proxies for Iran, launched the assault, affecting up to half of the world's largest supply. And the United States is laying the blame at Iran's feet. Iran, however, is denying the charges, saying that the United States is now turning to a maximum lying policy instead of one of maximum pressure. While at the same time, 2 Iranian companies have just signed agreements worth $440 million to develop a gas field in the Persian Gulf. Now, in other news, Israel is by and large doing very well financially, and at least half of all Israeli adults hold high credit scores. But a new report now suggests that these high financial marks might be giving us false confidence, as at the same time, the average Israeli checking account is a whopping negative 25,000 shekels. Yes, you heard that right. The average Israeli is roughly $7,000 in the red. So how can this be? Well, the answer might surprise you. Well, the data was compiled by sampling over 50,000 users on a credit rating app, Captain Credit, and it reveals a very complex answer. For starters, Israel's credit system differs from those of other countries. Most cards in Israel are not credit cards, but rather deferred debit cards, which automatically charge a lump sum to the holder's account once a month. And this regulated payment helps to build good credit scores. But at the same time, Israel's cost of living is among the highest of all the OECD countries. And outside the tech industry, most jobs pay a relatively median to low salary, which brings us to the second point. People are spending way beyond their means. In fact, Captain Credit CEO Moshe Yadgal says that nearly 50% of Israelis have permanently overdrawn accounts, as people repeatedly take out loans to cover their negative balances. And nearly 5% of Israelis are also paying off up to 5 loans concurrently, while another 7.5% of those sampled carry at least 5 credit cards, which they use to surpass their credit limits. So then what's the solution? Well, unfortunately, we don't have one yet. We're only now beginning to learn the extent of the mess, as the Bank of Israel's database went public just 5 months ago in an effort to increase transparency. A study coming out of Ben-Gurion University is now saying that shrimp are the aquafarming food of the future, and this comes as scientists have actually created a kind of super prawn that they say could alleviate poverty and even reduce disease. Well, here with more is ILTV's Nittany Manson. Nittany, thank you for coming in on super prawns. That's a cool one. So, all right, so tell me about the study. What does it say exactly?
So basically, researchers and scientists at Ben-Gurion University have discovered these super prawns, as you said. Basically, I mean, look at them. They look delicious, don't they?
Oh yes, very good.
But they have changed the shrimp so that they only have female chromosomes. There are no male of these super shrimps.
Sucks to be a shrimp, I guess.
Yeah, but it's actually, the really cool thing about them is that they will be able to alleviate poverty and actually help with disease.
Yeah, okay, so how? This I need to know.
Okay, so disease, there's actually in sub-Saharan Africa, there's a type of snail that carries a parasite that is actually affecting over 220 million people. And these shrimp actually eat those snails. So having these shrimp around will help with those people that aren't actually able to get medical care for that.
So it's kind of like a preventative care introduced into the wild.
It's a preventative care, and sending them out in the wild, there's no actual.
Okay, so how does it help with poverty? That's the real question I think that we need to know.
Poverty, they'll be able to grow and sell the shrimp, and people who are in these areas with aqua farming and things like that.
Okay, so it creates
will be
like
able
this economy.
It's like a farming economy, yeah.
Amazing.
With areas that actually have income in developing countries.
Well, it's too bad they're not kosher. Otherwise, maybe we could introduce it
well,
here.
That's the fun part of Israel, shrimp coming out of Israel.
Apparently. But Nini, thank you so much. This is Super Shrimp, everybody.
Super Shrimp.
All right, thank you. All right, now I've just got 2 words for you, butter strike. Because it seems that the Israeli dairy industry is going through a time where they are just simply not making any butter. And butter may be an item on your grocery list that you take for granted, but now that the brands we're used to aren't producing it, you might want to know why. And ILTV's correspondent, Shanna Fuld, did a little investigating and has the answers. Shanna, why is the dairy industry, not producing any butter?
So actually today I went over to the store a couple times this week, and I just poked around a little bit, and I asked the attendant there who was stocking, where's the Israeli butter? He said, Ain, there is none. and I said, okay, why? He said, there's just no butter. So what I've learned...
Simple.
There's no butter.
There's no butter.
There's no Israeli butter. So what I've learned is that the dairy industry here in Israel, they just said, we're not making a profit on butter. Our other products are fine, but we're not turning a profit on butter. Butter is one of the items here in Israel that are socialized. Right. And so there's a max price that it can sell.
So like milk and eggs and certain other products.
Right. So in a way, the companies that are producing it aren't able to control what price they're putting out. And these companies are Tenuva, Strauss, and Tara, and they just say they're not earning a profit.
Okay, so how are we getting butter into Israel?
Okay, so the government realized that people need butter. I needed to make it for French toast this week. That's how I figured this out. And so what they're doing is companies are now importing butter from Finland, Denmark, and Russia. So if you go to the store and you don't see any of your regular items there, you can find these brands from Europe. And the Israeli government basically took away the import tax to alleviate the cost, and also removed the 17% VAT that customers pay at the supermarket.
Okay, so they're trying to roll on some of those savings down the line, even if the Israeli brands can't really hack it anymore.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're getting our butter, albeit not Israeli local butter. Shanna Fuld, thank you so much for coming in.
No problem.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should once again be partly cloudy and warm with a comfortable low of 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect a slight drop in temperatures to a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. That's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.53 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for coming.